Hello, my beautiful psychology students. Here we're coming to the third to last section within the social influence module, and we're going to be looking at resistance to social influence. So this is why it looks at the idea to explain why some people do not conform or do not obey within situations. So we're going to look at the idea of social support. This has been a clear theme that we saw in Milgram's variations and also in Ash's variations, so we're going to use that research. So in both obedience and conformity, we have seen that a person has some form of social support. The levels of these two forms of social influence drops. We clearly saw that. For example, in conformity, in Ash's study, we have seen that if the other non-conformitist, so the confederate, was not giving the correct answer, sorry, but a different wrong answer, the majority of the naive participants felt able to pursue their own conscience. So that meant because they had somebody else not going along with the majority, they felt more able to carry out what and give their answer what they thought was right. So again, they have that social support. However, if the other nonconformist, so the confederate, started to conform, so does the naive participant. So actually, this idea of not conforming can be very short-lived. If the social support disappears, then we're more likely to conform back to the majority of the group. In obedience, Milgram's research, when the disobedient confederate, the levels of obedience dropped from 65% to 10%. Even the naive participant did not follow the disobedience actions. It gave the naive participants a model for acting out in their own conscience. So in Milgram's variation, we saw that as soon as there was some form of social support, another teacher, right, it gave them the model, well, if they're not obeying, that means I don't have to obey either. So really this idea of social support can be used as an explanation as to why a person may not conform and may not obey in a situation. So let's add some AO3 with regard to it. And we've got some nice research support for both conformity and obedience. So let's look at resistance to conformity. Allen and Levine, they found that, put in brackets, in an Ash-like experiment, that conformity decreased when a non-conformant dissident, even if they wore thick glasses and stated that they had difficulty with his eyesight, they found that conformity levels dropped. So even if this person had all these obstacles, but if they weren't going along with the majority, it gave the confidence for the naive participants not to conform as well. In resistance to obedience, we've got a nice piece of research there. Gamson et al. Found that higher levels of resistance to obey compared to Milgram. Now, in this research, it was a Milgram type experiment, but it was done in group forms. So they were in groups. So 29 out of the 33 groups of participants rebelled. So this study really showed, because they were in groups, they would have had the social support. So this study was working with groups of participants. It shows the power of social support increases greater resistance. So both of these pieces of research we can use as research support for the idea that if we have social support, people are more likely to resist. If we have social support, more people are likely to disobey or resist obedience with regards to it. So just nice little AO3s that we can use there. Now, we're going to look at our second explanation, locus of control. Now, this was developed by Julian Rotter in the 1960s. And it looks at the idea, this is down to personal control of our lives. It's that sense of how much control. Do we have control over our lives, ourselves, or is it externally, the factors beyond us? So it refers to the sense of control each person has over their lives with regards to it. So we have what is called an internal locus of control. Refers to a person who believes that they have control of what happens in their lives and they take responsibility for whatever happens within it. So internal, it's about you taking control. You see that you are the person in control. Whereas we have what Rotter identified as an external locus of control, refers to a person who believes that it is the external factors that has control, and they personally have no control and cannot take responsibility for what happens. So this is where a person believes, well, it's not my fault, it's the things around them that is causing things to happen within their life. So if we go to an internal locus of control, I'll give you an example. Yeah, I failed that test. It's because I didn't do any revision for it. You know, I should have done more than the 10 minutes before the actual test. So it's my fault. So they're taking responsibility. Whereas an external locus of control would say, well, the it's not my fault that I failed the test. It's because, you know, my brother and sister at home were making such a lot of noise, I couldn't do any revision. And then my gran came round to visit, so I had to be polite and spend the rest of the afternoon with her. So here we can see the difference. Internal, the person feels that they have control over their lives and they take responsibility for their actions, where external locus of control is they feel that they have no control over their actions and behaviors. It is the external factors around them, the things that are happening around them, that will cause their behavior, and therefore they don't really take any form of responsibility. But please note that you're not just an internal locus of control or an external locus of control. Rotter identifies there is a continuum. You can have internal locus of control at one end and external locus of control at the other. And actually, you know, we do move about. We'll probably be more dominant one or the other, but within it, you know, sometimes you may be more successful than others, and you might kind of think, well, and then you move up or down on this continuum. So it's not a fixed characteristics that we have, because certain situations you may feel that you have no control, whereas in other situations you feel you have control. So remember, it's a continuum on it. Now, so it's not a matter of being a consistent internal or external locus of control. So don't think you're either one or the other. Situations will cause you to move slightly on this continuum. Now, we're still sticking here with locus of control. Who is the most likely to resist social influence? Well, according to locus of control, the person who's more likely to resist social influence is a person with an internal locus of control. They're the ones that are more likely to resist social influence. So that means more likely to resist in conformity and more likely to resist in obedience, as this type of individual will take responsibility for their actions, their own actions and experiences, and makes decisions based on their own thoughts and beliefs. So they're less persuaded by the external factors, and that means those others. They take time to internalize it, think about it, and therefore will act on that rather than what somebody else is telling them or what everybody else is doing. It has been found that those with an internal locus of control are individuals who are more confident, self-aware, goal-orientated, and less likely to seek social approval of others. Now, I've highlighted the word more because a person with an external locus of control can be confident, right? And that type of thing. But these individuals are more confident, self-aware, and goal-orientated. You know, these individuals are more likely to resist social influence. So therefore, if we're looking at the question, who is most likely not to resist social influence according to locus of control, it would more likely be a person with an internal locus of control. Nope, I've got that wrong. I looked at the question there. So who's most likely not to resist would be a person with an external locus of control. Get it right, Mrs. Smith. What you doing, man? Okay, so we've got our two explanations, social support and locus of control. So those can explain why people resist social influence. So our last AO3 on locus of control, we're going to look at one piece of supportive research, and then we're going to look at a piece of contradictory research. So here we've both got a strength and a limitation of the locus of control. So Holland replicated Milgram's research and measured whether a person had an internal or an external locus of control. So a replication of Milgram, but before they did it, he did a measurement of an internal and external locus of control and found that 37% of internals did not go to the highest shock level, but only 23% of externals did not continue, showing that internals showed greater resistance to authority than those who were regarded as being externals. So we can see the difference there, right, with regards to it. There is a difference. So we can use that to support the idea of the two types of locus of control and who's able to resist and who's less likely to resist the authoritarian figure in Milgram's study. Now, contradictory research, Twing et al. Carried out a meta-analysis from American obedience studies. Remember, what's a meta-analysis? Meta-analysis is using a collection of research carried out by other people who have a similar aim. In this case, they were looking for obedience studies, so a similar aim, right? So that's either using secondary data, they're not carrying out the research themselves. That's what a meta-analysis is. A little bit of research methods thrown in there. So actually, they did it from quite a long period of time, from 1960 to 2002. So I mean, that was 42 years. Oh, a bit of mental math there, Mrs. Smith. No, I'm right. So really, it was quite a longitudinal study. It used a lot of evidence from those different decades. And what they found was people became more resistant to obedience. So people were less likely to obey. However, they found that they became more of externals. That didn't quite make sense. But they found that the people were within these studies seemed to be seen as external locus of control rather than internal locus of control. So really, there's a bit of a contradiction there, because according to Rotter, external locus of controls are more likely to conform and obey, whereas internal locus of controls are less likely to conform and obey. But here they find contradictory, that actually higher disobedience was occurring, right? So they were resisting obedience, but they seem to be more external locus of control rather than internal locus of control. So challenging the idea that internal locus of control are more likely to resist. However, and there is a however here, these results could reflect the changing society where lots of things are not in a person's personal control. So maybe that's the reason why. There's a lot of things within our societies that we have no control over. And therefore, that's why they came up as externals rather than internals. So here we've got two nice evaluations, a nice strength and a limitations. So two lovely explanations as to why people will resist social influence. And this is applied to both conformity and obedience. Now, I think the next slide up is a lovely little surprise for you. Yes, essay time. So I'll just throw in some music here for you. Now, don't get panicky. Straightforward question. Describe and evaluate 2 explanations of resistance to social influence. Refer to evidence in your answer. Okay, let's do the 6 quick key things here. Command words, describe and evaluate. So that means we know it's AO1 and AO3. Okay, so we link it to the assessment objectives. It's 16 marks. What's that telling us? 6 marks AO1, 10 marks AO3. Woohoo! What's our topic area? Explanations of resistance to social influence. Right, so it's social influence is our big area, but it's looking for explanations to resistance. So come on, we've just done them. Social support and locus of control. Is there any application words here? No, we know it's just pure AO1 and AO3. So how many things is it asking us to do? It's asking us to do a describe and it's asking us to do evaluation. Now, think of your structure here. You've got 2 explanations. So in your mind, you need to do one little paragraph, AO1, explaining what it is. And you're going to then do 2 evaluations. Nice peels, remember, peels. And then your next AO1 paragraph for your next explanation, and then your 2 evaluations there. Peels. Now, it does say refer to evidence in your answer. So that means in your AO1s, we've looked at AO1s, we can link to Milgram and Ash. In your evaluation, we've got challenging research, supporting research, right? So you're automatically going to be bringing in the evidence in there. So really, that's not a worry in this essay because you're going to be using it. Now, you're going to have plenty of time to do this essay. You're going to look at your instruction sheet for this week and it will tell you when it's due. But remember, if you're finding it difficult, talk to me. Right. Remember, work through this, stop, pause, make your notes, and I will speak to you soon.